guys, welcome to ADR Tech Reviews, and today we're going to be doing my first actual physical how to build your own computer build guide and a personal rig update, number one, because this is actually my own computer that I'll be using to bring you guys this build guide. Before I start naming all the parts, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some footage of me disassembling my old computer in the old case, which is basically this entire thing except for the case. So there I can physically show you how horrible the case was for me and why I'm moving to the Pentax N2 Pro. So let's get it rolling. Alright, as you can see, it was a pretty much pain in the butt to use that case, and it brought me a lot of problems. And on a side note, sorry about the echo guys, but I am in my dining room, I guess you say quote unquote dining room, and I don't have a microphone on hand. It's a fairly large room and there is a lot of echo, so sorry about that. Alright, so let's dive into the parts. To start it all off, we're going to be using the A10 7850K by AMD. This is their top of the line APU, and I'll explain in a moment why I would not advise using this APU for this build, and I'll tell you guys in a moment. But housing that APU, we're going to be using the Asus A88XM Plus / CSM. This is a micro ATX motherboard, and I got it for a really nice price. It is an FM2 / FM2 Plus motherboard, so you can definitely put FM2 socket CPUs into this motherboard. What I like about it is the fact that it does have 2 PCIe slots, and it also has 4 RAM slots. So although it is a micro ATX motherboard, it doesn't really have the compromises that other micro ATX motherboards have. Moving on, I'm going to go into storage. For the first, we're going to be using the Mushkin Chronos SATA 3 solid state drive. This is a 120 gigabyte SSD for my OS and some games. I'm also going to be using an old hand-me-down. This is a WG Tiger SE. This is a 160 gigabyte drive. For more storage, I recently bought a 1 terabyte WD Green drive. This rig wouldn't be anything without a graphics card. So what I'm going to use is the R9 270 by AMD, and for RAM I'm going to be using 2 sticks of 4 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance RAM, so in total 8 gigabytes. For my power supply, I'm going to be using this, also a hand-me-down. I've actually been using this for about 5 years. This has traveled from a couple computers already. This is a Thermaltake TR2 500 watt power supply. I plan on upgrading this in the future because the power supply really is the most important part of your system, believe it or not. It is delivering all the electrical power to all your components and can easily kill off anything if you buy a really cheap one. The reason why I want to switch up on that power supply is one, it's kind of getting close to its death area, and it is causing some coil whine in some of my components. If you saw my R9 270 review, you can notice that I did talk about coil whine in this GPU, and I'm almost certain it's caused by the power supply, but there's a possibility it's not. I also kind of want to get a modular power supply with a little bit more wattage for future upgrades. Talking about the CPU cooler, which is, we weren't talking about it, but we're going to get into the conversation now. I'm going to be using an H80i. This is one of Corsair's performance CPU coolers. It's an all-in-one water cooling unit, which will fit just nicely in this M2 Pro. And for the case, you're going to be using the Vantex M2 Pro, which was actually my last video. I reviewed this case. And just a disclaimer, guys, if I reviewed anything, I will be putting up a little link here in the video showing my reviews for the parts that I do have reviews on. The motherboard, hard drives, and power supply I do not have reviews on, as also the RAM I don't have reviews on, so everything else I do have a review on, if you want to watch that. Alright guys, so starting off with the build guide, I do want to make a disclaimer. I want to tell you guys, before you actually put your rig in your system, I suggest that you make sure that everything works out of the box, saying that you put your CPU and you get your stock cooler and you put it on your CPU for now on your motherboard. You get your graphics card and you put it there too, and you power it on, make sure that everything works correctly, make sure Windows boots up before you put it into your case, where it'll be much harder to actually get access to those parts. Alright, so starting off with the review, I want to start off with the CPU. So first, you're going to be getting your CPU out of your motherboard. And also, another disclaimer before you start, you might want to get rid of your electrostatic discharger, ESD. This can fry your components if you do have electricity in your system. Lots of people use anti-static wrist straps or ankle straps. Me, I like to roll the dangerous way. But seriously, no. The reason why I don't have one is because the area where I live in there's a lot of humidity, so it basically keeps ESD levels low. But I do always have old power supply plugged into the wall, and I always touch the case when I'm handling my system. You start off by pulling the little lever next to the CPU socket. Then you take your CPU out, and before you do anything with it, I want you to locate the gold triangle on the CPU and locate the triangle on the motherboard socket. Once you've located these two, I would suggest that you do line them up together and carefully drop the CPU onto the motherboard. Make sure you do this carefully, because if you don't, you might mess up a pin. And also, if there's any force required to put down the CPU, I would suggest that you take a look at the pins, because there might be a bent one. After you put that down, you're gonna want to get the lever and push it back down. This will require a little bit of force, and push it down under the little peg sticking out of the CPU socket. After you've done that, I would suggest taking the RAM and locating the RAM slots on your motherboard. It's fairly simple. They're the long, thin ones. And make sure you look at the notch of the RAM and look at the notch on the actual socket itself. Pull back one or both of the clamps on the sides of the RAM slots. Depending on what motherboard you have, your motherboard may have only one or two clamps. Locate the notch on the RAM and the notch on the socket. Line them up and firmly press down on the RAM until you hear that little clicking noise. Here you will require some force. If you have dual channel RAM, if your motherboard has 4 slots, locate the same colored slot. If your motherboard has only 2, then fairly simple, just put it in the other slot. But this one has 4, so I just locate the black colored slot, just like the first one, and put it in there the same way I did the other one. Alright, after you have the CPU and RAM put in, it is ready to get put in the case. So let's get open the case and go do that. For tools, the only tools you should really need are a Phillips head screwdriver, and I use a wire cutter to cut zip tie ends. So yeah, these are the only 2 things you need, and maybe some 91% isopropyl alcohol if you really need to take off thermal paste if you have a used CPU or CPU cooler. Now before you put your motherboard on your case, the only logical thing to do is remove the side panel window first. if you're using a new case, when you remove your side panel window, you should be greeted by an accessory box. In this accessory box, you'll find the motherboard standoff screws, which are needed to install the motherboard onto your case. So before installing your motherboard, you're going to first get this I/O shield, go on the inside, and make sure that it's oriented in the right way before actually placing it. But once you know the orientation of your motherboard, then you just can not very easily put it in place. There we go, I finally have it in place. It took a little bit of fiddling, but it's there. Now next, you may notice that this case has pre-installed motherboard standoffs. Beforehand, I did install two extra ones, considering that I do have micro ATX motherboard. I just needed to install these two here. Before you do so, I would suggest that you hover the motherboard on top of the standoffs to make sure that everything is correctly in place. And once you realize that everything is fine, then just slide it and make sure that all the standoffs are correctly lined up. For this one, it's the I/O shield is actually providing some interference with the motherboard. There we go. After you make sure everything is lined up, proceed by getting the screws included in your motherboard's toolbox. They should look like this. They're little tiny motherboard standoff screws. If you don't know which one they are, they should be in your case's manual. Okay, so I would start off by screwing in the center screw, and from here we just keep on screwing in the screws. Now keep in mind, don't screw in all the screws way too tight, because they could bend your motherboard in places it does not want to be bent. Now that I'm done screwing, you can see that I do have some extra standoffs here and here. But it doesn't really cause a problem because I don't have the motherboard physically on it. But if they were under the motherboard, I would be careful and try to remove them because it will cause the motherboard to short out. But now that we're done, we're gonna go ahead and move on to putting in the power supply, which is back here if you can't see the bracket. So let's go ahead and do that. Now to take off the PSU bracket, we would have to take off the rear side panel. And under here, in this case, we can see that it is accessible by thumb screws. So remove 3 thumb screws here if you can't see them, and the PSU bracket will come out through the front. So let's get to it. Well, now we're done, and we just need to pull out the PSU bracket from the front. To pull out the PSU bracket, it's just as simple as to slide and pull upwards. Here we're gonna have access to the PSU mounts. All you need to do is get your power supply, locate where the cables are, and orientate which way you want to put it in, either this way or this way. Personally, I'm gonna go ahead and have the fan facing down to receive cool air coming from the bottom, and also for better cable management. So let's get to it. After you have this power supply mounted here, you want to go to the back and mount it with screws. So let's do that. Thankfully, this case provides us with thumb screws instead of screws to mount the PSU onto the little bracket thing here. So let's go ahead and screw. Now you may be noticing that this screw hole here is left empty. You only really need 3. Since it provides thumb screws, I'd rather just use thumb screws and actual screws to make my life easier if I need to swap it, which I really want to soon because it's non-modular and it's a pain to actually route the cables that you don't need. Now, to mount the PSU bracket back on, you just need to line it back up here, put it on the floor, and slide it back in. And then you just go on the back and you put the thumb screws back on. Now all you need to do is put the thumb screws back in the same holes you took them out of. And there you go, the PSU bracket is back on. Now the next thing we're gonna do is put the CPU cooler on the CPU. Oh, this weird lighting thing here. It's my light in the background. Whoa. So as you can see, I took off the 140mm fan that was originally here, so I can change my plan of putting the radiator on the top because there wasn't enough clearance from here to here for such a thick rad and push and pull. So I'm going to mount it here, and you guys can see me do that for right now. Alright, now that we have the radiator mounted, we're going to go ahead and put the thermal paste for the pump to go to the CPU. But just as a disclaimer, I want to tell you that I am running this as an intake, and I know it is unfiltered, but I do want to have cold air being received into the radiator to cool the radiator down in a good way. Now, what I usually do is I usually take out the first memory module to provide more clearance in the beginning of actually putting in the pump itself. So I will be doing that now. So here I'm going to be using some Arctic MX2 thermal compound. This is something I got a while back, and I realized that it's very watery, meaning that it does kind of slip up a bit and it spreads a lot. So I would suggest to be careful because just now I just popped it off and got it over my fingers, and probably something else, I don't know what. Hopefully not my shirt. Alright, so to apply thermal compound, you don't really need to put much. Usually I just do the small line method. Lots of people say a grain of rice, but for this one I would suggest a little bit less, considering it spreads a lot. So you just need to put some on there and there. So that's about it. I would put a little bit more here. Now if you put a little bit too much thermal paste on your CPU, it's okay. You just get a little piece of plastic or paper and just wipe off or just like scrape off of the excess. Now you see you have a fairly uniform glob, so it will just spread out when I put the block on. So let's get to it. Alright, so if you did notice, I had to fumble a little bit with the tubing to actually get it to fit alright, and also with a little bit with the RAM because I wanted the tubing to have enough clearance while I was putting it in, so I didn't bend any RAM or the RAM slots. So now it's all okay. Now after, all you need to do is just do some pass-throughs of these fan leads and you'll be just fine. Now since this is the H80i, it does come with a few cables I would suggest you pre-route. So this one, for example, goes onto a mini USB port here on the front, if I can get to it. Here we go. And then you just casually, thankfully there's a a little lead back here, so you just lead it through the rear. And there you go, it's all cable managed. Now the H80i also has a fan splitter which connects to the top of the pump over here. Alright, so now I have the fan splitter up, I can route it to the back so I can put the fans there. Now the pump also comes with a motherboard fan lead, which I would suggest that you do plug in to the motherboard CPU fan, since it is PWM, and so it can indicate the speeds. Alright, so now we have all the fans connected in the back. We have the H80i installed. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go to the rear and we're going to connect the hard drives. Now that we're in the rear, we're going to go ahead and connect our SSD first. Here, this hard drive has a removable SSD sled. So we're going to go ahead and orientate it here. And the screws used are the same screws used for the motherboard standoffs. According to our manual, this is what is also used for the SSD mount. So we're going to go ahead and screw those in. Alright, now that we have everything screwed in, we're going to go ahead and then just slide it back in with this friction mount system, and we're okay. Now for the hard drives, I went ahead and removed the top hard drive bay because I only have two, and I'm just going to use the bottom hard drive bay to put my hard drives in. So here we go. Alright, so these hard drive bays are toolless, so all you need to do is get your hard drive, put it here, line up the screws with the little nicks that it has on the side. Keep in mind that these little nicks do have little rubber grommets to keep the hard drives from making noise, which is awesome. And it was also awesome that if you really do want to screw it down, they do provide screw holes here and here. Alright, so the first drive is in, let's get on to the second one. Alright, so both the hard drives are in, and next we're gonna be putting the fans on the case. So let's get to that. Alright, so I am gonna be putting this 140mm fan that was included with the case, and this LED 120mm fan as an exhaust on the top to remove all this hot air that is rising from the case. So let's get to that. And just as a reminder, these fan screws can be included in your case's toolbox, and if your case doesn't have the specified screws, then I would consult the manual, or I would check the fans to see if they brought any. Alright, now that I have this top fan installed, I do want to make a disclaimer that these screws here, the threads were too thick for the threads on the fan itself, so I only put two, and I ended up dripping the screw head on this one because it was just so hard to put in. Alright, so now we're going to put in the 140mm exhaust fan. Alright, now we have this fan installed. Well, last but not least, we're going to install the graphics card. Well, graphics card installation is fairly simple. All we need to do is remove the PCI covers on the case with thumb screws here, and just remove it out. Then we just need to locate the PCIe slot, and then we just put the graphics card in the PCIe slot, put the thumb screws back onto the graphics card so it can stay on the PCIe mounting point, and then we're all done without the wiring, of course. Now when you mount your graphics card, you want to make sure that the notches on the graphics card and the PCIe connector line up and that it is long enough to fit on the graphics card. Sometimes some slots will be by 16, but they will only end or at least halfway. You would have to consult your motherboard manual to see if you are using the correct PCIe connector. Well guys, we basically have all installation done at this point. Now, we're gonna go into my least favorite part, which is called wiring. Now I'm not gonna go into in depth about this since all cases and all people are different about wiring. Just as a disclaimer, these rubber grommets here are for passing through cables, and they are in the back, which you will see when I do a fast forward of me just wiring up my computer. You'll see that there are some Velcro straps and sometimes some little metal loops that you can put your zip ties on to keep everything flush against the case. You also want to make sure that the back of your case has enough space for you to put cables and make sure they're not too thick so the side panel can close correctly and flushly. Alright guys, I'm going to start the cabling. I'll get back to you when I'm finished. Now I will note that a very important thing are these front panel connectors. They're going to be coming to you in a variety of cables, and they go connected to your front panel connector pins, which you would have to read the manual. Actually, please, hopefully you didn't throw away that manual for your motherboard so you can know where these pins go. These are the only things I really will be able to advise you on, because everything else is fairly straightforward, and everything like the USBs go on their own connector, and for example on the graphics card and the 24-pin ATX connector go there. But these are fairly straightforward and they can only go in one place, one way. So let's continue on with the cable management. Alright, so as you can see, after a while doing some cable management, I ended up putting this SMD in the back. It's really hard to do this without a modular power supply. I really wish I could have done a little bit more, but since there was so many cables, it was really hard to do that. So let's go also see the front, because I really think the front is the best part of this, because there was a lot of wires I had to pull back to make a clean edge. Now, as you can see here in the front, there are a few cables that I couldn't help but not manage because they're just really long and flimsy like that. For example, this really thick USB 3.0, some of these USBs that didn't have fully sleeved up to the top, so you see some colored wires here. The 24-pin as well. These power connectors with these SATA cables, I like how they can't turn down. The PCIe connector is also fairly difficult to cable manage. But everything else is pretty much fine. I really think with the front cover on, it's going to look great. Whoa. Wow. here? Oh, I'm in my room. New shirt. My computer's now in my back of my room on my desk. Oh yeah. Well, I couldn't finish yesterday. I went ahead and finished off the last of the cable management. Put the side panel back on in the back, and I brought it to my room and connected the power cable and the HDMI cable and mouse and keyboard, because I have yet to turn it on. Yes guys, I was waiting to turn it on to capture this on video. This is the morning of the next day after I filmed yesterday, and let's say I have about an hour of video to edit. It's gonna take a long time. I did post some stuff on the internet. I posted a few glamour shots of my computer, as much as I can do with a like 4 megapixel phone. 4 megapixel phone. Alright, so I'm just gonna get started. I want to turn on this thing. It's just been killing me for the past few hours. I barely could sleep last night because it's just sitting here. So let's turn this damn thing on. Alright, so I got a better angle. Alright, let's see if this thing works. Damn it! Guys, I'm a noob and I didn't turn on the power switch on the back. So let's flip that switch over. Let's try this again. Oh, it's really loud. Alright, whoop. Let's see video. Oh, there we go. Let's see if this thing actually boots into Windows. Okay, lights are a good thing, guys. I'm gonna just pan a little bit. It's kind of just loading up all the crap that it has. See, there it is. Oh, wait, what's going on? New CPU install, which is a lie. Let's see, just okay. Okay. That's good. It detects the boot manager. I don't know why. Wow, it's actually cooler than I ever thought it would be. Detects everything fine. Let's see if this front fan is working. Yep. Right, so let's save changes and reset, I guess. I really like how it looks inside this case. It looks really nice. This case is awesome to work with, by the way, especially with a mini ITX board. No, a micro ATX board. Yes, with a micro ATX board, this is actually fairly fun to work with. I had zero issues actually. The only, I guess you could say, bump I had was installing the radiator onto the side there, which was fairly difficult. Oh, there we go. It's going into Windows fine. Hopefully. I think it's just loading. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Alright, so next thing I'm gonna do is just show you guys while I'm in Windows. Show you guys while I'm in Windows to see if everything works out fine. Alright, so I put in my dual monitors here. Just fine. Detects the CPU just fine, detects everything just fine. Temperatures are actually fairly low, lower than my other case, so I'm guessing that's because there's more air going into that radiator there. There's not really much to say except for there's a little snag here where Corsair Link isn't working correctly because it's not connected normally. I originally put in the Corsair Link cable onto the motherboard CPU fan connector. So I'm guessing Corsair Link is trying to read it through the CPU fan connector, but there's no information being sent because I moved it over. So I'll just have to switch that over, and that's the only issue I'm getting right now. Temperatures are fine. For some reason I'm going at 62 degrees. And I'm guessing because I just booted up, so. Alright, so now it's time for what I think is really a moment of truth when the side panel comes back on. What I usually do is I never put the side panel back on before I turn on any of my builds. after like messing around with the hardware, because if something goes wrong, I don't want to spend the time of taking off the side panel and putting it back, you know, fixing everything, you know. It's just more work. I think it's bad luck, because every time I put the side panel on before I turn it on, it kind of just messes up, and I don't know, something happens. There's an issue somewhere. So let's get the beautiful side panel back on. I really love the side panel of the M2 Pro, really. You can't see it. But don't worry, you will. Don't worry, my son. And voila! You can't see it. But don't worry, I'm going to film some glamour shots of the case and all its glory. So yeah. And don't mind all this cabling back here. This is actually all temporary because I was setting up the computer. You can't see me. Oh no. Yes, because I was taking out the computer and plugging everything back. It's just a mess back there. Alright guys, if you saw my amateur attempt at doing some nice little glamour shots with my really old camera, just a little comment here. You might see some graininess when I'm filming the black of this case. Black on black with this camera doesn't really focus well, and I have had some issues with that, and there's sadly no way to fix the graininess without getting a new camera. So hopefully I'll be getting a new camera soon. I'm not sure. I kind of don't have the money for it right now. I've been looking for a DSLR camera, but those are expensive. So that kind of comes to show this channel is just brought up by me myself. I just want to put this out here because not a lot of people know. This is a channel only managed by me. I don't have any help. AMD does offer to send me things like that's. Stuff like that, sponsorships, viewers, all you guys bring me the motivation and the support, and stuff like sponsors, they bring me the products to review for you guys. And stuff like this this here build guide and personal build vlog, this actually takes a lot out of me. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of stress, and especially the editing portion of it. I have about an hour of video to edit, and it's probably just going to end up being a 25-minute video if that kind of puts it into perspective. So just to tell you guys, please, if you see me doing something wrong, don't put it out, don't tune out. You see me kind of stuttering a little bit, it's just me because I'm kind of taking that learning curve of YouTube. I'm trying to get used to the camera, I'm trying to get used to all this. It's all new to me. So if you guys can definitely keep on your support, those of you that are supporting, those of you who don't like my channel, if you decide that you don't like it, leave, man. I mean, every review counts, but if you don't like it, I don't want to force anything upon you. Alright, so after my little rant here, just talking about everything, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the overview time. Well, this case is really nice to work with. I did have some issues when video stuff because of the space and where I was at and stuff. This is really fun, guys. Stuff like this, I love doing stuff like this. It's a lot of work, but it's fun, guys. I do have some comments about this case. They're all good. They're all really good comments. Everything in this case is laid out very well. It's modifiable, where you can just move everything you want out of the way. For example, I moved the first hard drive cage on top so I can have a little bit more airflow because I didn't really need it. It has a lot of space inside, believe it or not. It's a full tower, but there's a lot of space on the inside to work with, especially with an MATX board. For radiators, especially a thick one like the H80i and push-pull, it fits very easily on the side there. On the top, sadly, it didn't fit because of the thickness and the push-pull setup that I have on there. Talking about cable management, that's a mess. I'm actually getting a new power supply soon. and I actually just ordered it today. Like before I was filming this, I went ahead on Newegg. I got an EVGA 750 watt fully modular power supply. They're going on at the time of this recording for like what, $79 because there's a rebate with some shipping and stuff. So it's a really good deal. 750 watts, fully modular. It's really nice. Any other comments I have on this? Not really. If you notice on my parts list, I said all the parts. I actually do have some reviews on some of these parts because the graphics card and the CPU are actually sent to me by AMD themselves, and I did buy the H80i myself, and this Fantex case was a Christmas present. So not all of this is all sponsored, guys. Some of this actually comes out of my pocket or my parents' pocket. Alright guys, to end this build guide off, I'm just gonna go ahead and say thank you for you guys. Really, if without the watchers and without the support I get from family and friends, I wouldn't be able to do stuff like this. I've been doing YouTube for around 3 months. It's been really fun, honestly. Doing what I love computers, I love technology, and just doing what I love has really been a great ride, and I hope to be doing this for a long time after. To put things into perspective about what I am, this is a hobby, guys. I have school and stuff to take care of, I have family, I have friends. I don't have a lot of free time when it comes to everything put together. But I do take some time off my day to do this YouTube stuff. I mean, I edit for hours and hours on end. I sleep late doing editing. I sleep late thinking about what to do next for my videos, and all for you guys. So hopefully you guys will like my videos and support me a little bit more as I grow a little bit more. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video with a thank you for you guys for being there to support and for helping the channel just grow. Like always, like, subscribe, and share. Please, that share part, that's very important. Just clicking that share button, sharing to Facebook, to Twitter, actually helps a lot to my channel, bringing in more people and more viewers. Also, check out my Facebook and my Twitter, and any of my other videos. I will link up reviews back on the parts section. Alright guys, see you in the next one.